This is my Android phone. But right now, it's not running Android apps. It's actually running a full Linux desktop with real multitasking. And when I connect it to a monitor, it basically becomes a portable Linux system. In this video, I'll show you what this setup can really do, what works well, what doesn't, and where the actual limits are. Let's start. The first thing I wanted to check was stability. I left this system running for more than 15 minutes, with multiple apps open, and background tasks running. There were no crashes, no forced restarts, and no major slowdowns. I also tested a longer session. I kept Linux running with VNC connected for more than 2 hours. During that time, the phone screen was locked, and the device was just sitting on a table. When I unlocked the phone and came back, everything was still running normally, without any crash or reset. I tested multiple desktop environments to see how they behave on this setup. GNOME looks clean and modern, and even though it's heavier, it was running smoothly in my testing. KDE gives you a lot of flexibility and many customization options, but it does need some tuning to feel consistently smooth. LXDE is lightweight and simple, and it works well if you want the lowest overhead. So all three work, but they each make different trade-offs between features, performance, and simplicity. There's no single best choice, but lighter desktops clearly work better in this kind of setup. This is a real Debian system, so standard Linux workflows work exactly how you'd expect. I use the terminal to install tools like Podman, htop, and other packages using apt. I also tested desktop applications like Firefox, LibreOffice, and the File Manager. These aren't mobile apps, they're full desktop Linux applications. For things like basic productivity, browsing, and development tools, this behaves very much like a normal Linux system. Multitasking works the same way it does on a desktop. I tested switching between apps, running the terminal alongside Firefox, and working with multiple windows at the same time. When you're using VNC, the phone's touchscreen works like a trackpad. One finger moves the cursor, 2 fingers let you scroll, and there's an option inside VNC to open the keyboard. It's not touch optimized like Android apps, but for desktop-style interaction, it works reliably. You're also not limited to using this directly on the phone. I connected to this Linux system from my Mac using VNC and ADB port forwarding. That makes it useful as a remote Linux environment for development, testing, or even server-style tasks. It's not as fast as a desktop PC, but it's stable and it gets the job done. You might be wondering how this setup was installed and where this Linux environment actually comes from. This native Linux environment is a new feature introduced by Google in Android 16. Android has always used the Linux kernel, but with Android 16, Google added a proper Linux environment that can run a real Debian system on supported devices. This is inspired by ideas from Chrome OS, where Android and Linux apps run side by side. Right now, this feature is still experimental. It's mainly available on selected devices, and many manufacturers haven't enabled it yet. To get a graphical interface, I used an open-source project that sets up Debian 12 with a VNC-based desktop. This script also gives you the option to install multiple desktop environments like GNOME, KDE, or LXDE. I've already made a complete installation video for this setup, so if you want step-by-step instructions, check that out instead. You might also be wondering how I'm using this on an external monitor. If your phone supports display output, you can simply connect it using HDMI or USB-C. My Pixel 6a does not support external display output, so instead I used a Raspberry Pi, connected to a monitor. On the Raspberry Pi, I'm using skrcp to mirror the phone's screen in real time. This lets me use the Linux desktop on a larger display, even on devices without native HDMI support. If your device doesn't support Android's native Linux environment, there is still a practical alternative. You can run Ubuntu on Android using Termux and Proot with a full desktop environment on top. I tested this setup on a Samsung S23, and since that device supports external display output, the desktop experience was even more usable. This approach runs Ubuntu with pre-installed desktop tools and development software without requiring root access. It's not the same as Android's native Linux feature, but it works well and is compatible with many more devices. This isn't a replacement for a full PC, but as a portable Linux environment, running on an Android phone, it's genuinely capable when you understand what it's designed for. If this can run smoothly, On an older device like the Pixel 6a, it's exciting to imagine what it could do on modern flagship phones. I'm also working on the Udroid project where I'll be doing real-world testing of Ubuntu on Android setups like this. If that sounds interesting, you can subscribe to the channel to see how far this can really go. Thanks for watching. I hope this gave you a clear idea of what Linux on Android can actually do.